Now let's again focus on error handling when it comes to client side. First of all, we need to make sure that we again update our client side API. So right click on your client app folder and open in terminal. Now let's run our command that we already know. It's npx ng-open API-gen. As you already know, this is only working when you start the application. So make sure your application is running in the background by starting the debugger or simply hitting Ctrl F5. Go to the book flight component in client app, source app book flight. Now inside here, go to the TypeScript file, to the component, and we need to make some adjustments right here. So first of all, right now you can see we only have a flight ID, but our find flight, well, the RESTful API endpoint that we can access using our new Angular component or our new Angular generated service, will return a flight read model for sure, right? So we edited our REST API and now we can start implementing it right here. So go ahead to the very top and start importing, first of all, our flight service. We implement that from /API/services again /flight.service. Now afterwards, as I already said, we no longer have only a simple string. We want to take that flight as a flight read model. So we go ahead and import the flight rm from /API/models. Now, there's a spelling mistake, sorry for this. So flight read model. And now we can use the flight service and take the result or the response and save it as a flight read model here. So in our constructor, this is the next step. We have that activated route already. Let's extend it even further and take another service from the injection. So simply go ahead and call private. Let me just write that in another line of code. Private flight service of type flight service. Now the injection will deliver us a flight service, which we can use inside of that component. As I said, here we have that flight ID. We want to extend that and also add a flight. And this one is of type flight RM. So this will be the actual flight that we want to book. Now let's save it like this and scroll a little bit down. Here we have our find flight, and this is an arrow function. As you can see, it's indicated by an arrow. Now we want to extend that a little bit further. This is why we have created that arrow function. I guess you remember that we had that line of code right inside that subscribe here, but now we want to write a little bit more code. And this is why we have created that arrow function. Now this dot flight service, we want to go ahead and call find flight and pass in a parameter. So let's create an object, set ID to this dot flight ID, right? So we set it right here. Now we can use flight ID, just that one for sure. And we use that ID as a parameter. And then since this is a backend call again, we can subscribe to it. And our flight, this is the one that we will get received in the response, is this flight equals to the flight delivered. So what we do is we take that result. So we find the flight, we take that flight, and we set this flight from that component here to the one that we have found in the API call. Now, I mean, there is a lot of this and that flight and the one from the response. So if I say we take this flight, every time I say this, I'm really talking about that component here in, or it's more, to be more specific, that field here. Okay, basically in very easy words, we simply find the flight, we take the flight that we have found or it got returned from the API, and we save this value here in the component in a field called flight. Now let's start working on the template so that we can display that flight. Go ahead in book flight and open the HTML template. Now, instead of writing all the markup again, you already know it's a lot of work and it's really not much learning once you have really written some HTML. So instead of writing every line of code now, what I suggest you to do is you go ahead to day 8 commit in the GitHub repository, check for bookflight.component.html, copy everything what's inside it and paste it here. Now I have pasted the HTML markup too. Now let's take a look. We can go through it but to be honest, most of it is really simple HTML markup using Bootstrap. You know grid, you know row, and you know columns. So simply go through it, just take a moment and go through that code. So here we have the flight. This is the field that we have defined right here. Now this is of type flight read model, so we can use airline. We can also bind it here for remaining number of seats, right? We can use flight departure. You know, this one is nullable, so go ahead and check if it's nullable or if it's null, and if not, take place. Here we have, again, time, which is piped to date to make it, well, nice, readable. And here again, we have flight departure time, this time piped to short time. We have had all of this before, so there is nothing really new right now, right? It's simple data binding to a specific field with all of the stuff you already know. So here we got our book button, and that one is not doing anything right now. Okay, so we're just taking care about data binding and displaying the actual flight. So save yourself some time now, go ahead and copy that over and paste it in, or definitely go ahead and you can also write that down, but we decided to not, well, waste your time by writing a lot of HTML markup because it's super time consuming and you will be short on time. We want to give you a way to proceed faster. So now let's save it and let's run the application. Let's take a look. Let's search for flight and click on book. Now, previously we only had that one string visible, which was the flight ID, the GUID. But now we have all that information here again, Los Angeles to Istanbul, we got that price, we got the remaining seats, we have a nice field here where we can enter something and book finally, which is not implemented yet. But now we have all of the updates which we made to our RESTful API integrated and visually displayed to our front end. Now let's take care about the error handling. This is why we are here, right? So what if we want to book a flight or search for flight and we deliver an GUID which is not, well, valid, which is not existing, right? Because in the URL bar, you can see a GUID right here, which is actually that flight that we can see. But if we change it, let me press Ctrl-Shift-J and just ignore that 404 for the favicon. We don't have an icon. This is why this error thrown. But let's go ahead and modify that GUID. Let me hit enter again. And you can see we are getting some error messages here. So we got a 404 error. And you can see that logged here. So HTTP headers 404 on our flight get endpoint where we deliver an ID. So let's take a look how we can also handle that just like in the search flights component.